So let's talk about Alien Earth Season 1, Episode 3, Metamorphosis. So I really like the opening title sequence. Normally they have the word start to form Alien Earth, and then I think in the background was just parts of the xenomorph. But this time it showed little clips of scenes from previous episodes, which I thought was kind of cool. Dibs seems to be very psychological or thinks a lot, and she wondered why their names had to be from Peter Pan, why couldn't they choose their own names, and why isn't her name Wendy, why is she Dibs, and also why Lost Boys if they aren't all boys and they are no longer children, they are in adult bodies, and that's not the Lost Boys. All very valid and interesting questions. When Wendy was running to find Joe said it's a trap. And I just thought, xenomorphs are kind of like other animals in that they're intelligent, but not that intelligent, right? They didn't take Joe to bait her. I guess it's possible if as a hive they were doing that or being ordered by a queen or something. But the xenomorph itself, I don't think kidnapped Joe just to draw her out. And why would it want to draw Wendy? And so when Wendy went into that meat locker thing, which was a trailer, he said it's a trap, and then the xenomorph pops their head in and just stands there, and they're looking at it, and it backs off. Why? That part made no sense. It acted a little bit too... It had thoughts. And I didn't really think that they had thoughts like that. And so then it backs out and it ends up going on top of this trailer. Why? Why did it go up there? For what? What kind of trap is this? So now that you got her in there, got them cornered, now you want them to come out? Why? And so you're waiting on top of this trailer for them to come out and get stabbed by Wendy. And then next thing, the whole trailer gets flipped. And Wendy fell out or something. And Joe's trying to walk up and find her. And he calls her by her other name, her human name, Marcy. And she doesn't hear him. And I thought, what the heck happened to her that she can't respond? Do we know? I don't know if I remember. I don't know. Where did she go? Maybe she was back where the trailer was from where it rolled. Maybe. And she didn't hear him. Because as he's going out, the alien, the xenomorph confronts him and then impales him with its freaking tail, right? And I'm like, if you were going to do that all along, why did you wait till now? It makes no sense. Not to me. Maybe I'm missing something. So he got, right? And then she comes up and hooks the alien by the incisors or whatever they're called, coming out of his mouth. Because at first I thought it was just, like that. But I was like, doesn't the xenomorph know how to let go? But I think maybe she hooked it, and that's why he couldn't let go. And then later on, spoilers. And then later on, they're inside that enclosure. She's stuck in there with it. When he closed the door and it ripped out, I don't know. I thought she was pulled in by that hook she was holding. And I was thinking, doesn't she know how to let go? Did I miss that? Was she pulled in because she was holding on to that? Or did the alien grab her? I must have missed it. But if it's because of that hook thing, I was like, why did she just let go? That made no sense too. So maybe I missed something. But it ends up her cutting its head off. And she might have been damaged so that she passes out. I thought, aren't synths much more durable? Aren't they more durable and can withstand a lot more? They can withstand their arms being cut off and then still talk and still do stuff because I don't think they feel pain, right? So why she pass out? Is it because these hybrids were built to be a little bit more human than the other synths or something? Why aren't they like the other synths but just have the brain of a human? Are they really not like synths biologically? I just thought they would be more resilient. Anyway, she's passed out. And I wonder why the acid didn't burn more. It's just sitting there. The first thing I looked at when I saw that the alien's head was cut off was her knife to see if it had melted or something like that. And it might have a little, but I was surprised that on the ground it wasn't sizzling and burning through. And then we come to Dibs again. She's the one with all the questions. She's the one who's having like a life crisis. She's been traumatized. They have the psychology, the mind of a child. Wouldn't it make sense to think that they need to be thought of as children? Even though you're saying they're not human, they have child's mind that could be very fragile and easily influenced. Even if you're saying they give them more brain power or whatever, they still have psychology of children, and she looks traumatized. She needs to see a therapist. You know what I mean? She's having these weird flashbacks of seeing her human self, looking at her new body as her human self, and then vice versa, seeing herself, looking at herself inside the body, or things like that. I think they should have waited. I don't think they were all ready. I think maybe Wendy was more mature and ready for more. I think the other kids definitely were not ready. Physically, maybe they're quote unquote ready because they can't die or whatever, or they're supposed to be more resilient. But other than that, they have a mind of a child. So they should have been treated that way. And speaking of children, those two kids, I can't remember the name. Oh my God. Slightly, and that other kid, I don't remember his name either, but they're chilling at the eggs and they find some shredded skin. That's the skin of the chest buster that ends up being the xenomorph. At the time I was like, oh, what sheds the skin like that? That's what it is. But they are really acting like the caricature of children. They are like bickering, and they were really acting super young. And while some children may act like that, I'm not so sure they would be as dumb as them to treat this so nonchalantly and think that they could just play around like this is not a big deal, not like this is not a dark, scary place, and we've seen some aliens actually already, and now there's these eggs. They should be maybe scared as children. Though the thing is, they said that they don't have emotions. But then he was scared. Like that one kid was mad at the other kid for scaring him. So they can have the psychology and thoughts of possibly being scared without feeling scared. I don't think that makes sense. So if they have no emotions, they shouldn't be scared. But he was scared at first, remember? And then they fought because he scared the other kid. So I don't know. It just doesn't all make sense to me. But in any case, they're acting like idiots. They're not acting like how real children would behave in that situation. And if the reasoning is because they have no feelings, okay, but it's not consistent. So they're just really stupid, clueless. Real kids would be smarter. And they're technically real kids in their heads without fear. So I don't know, but still, I don't know. Like I said, inconsistent. And then the cyborg, I keep forgetting a lot of people's name, but I remembered his now. His last name is Morrow, I guess. He is having a life crisis also. At first, I thought he was straight up more programming than human in what he's done thus far. But it turns out that his human side is questioning everything he's doing. He's having this whole morality issue of, is it okay to kill people because you're following orders, or should you care about life and not follow those orders? He's having that problem. And I wonder if he should have known this possibility since he's the head of security and stuff like that. There's always someone sent on the ship, on the research vessel, who's got ulterior motive that this is what's really happening on the ship and what the real mission is, versus everybody else is just doing their job. And this one guy's job is to bring back the specimens. He's kind of like that guy in this. And as a company man, you wouldn't expect him to have these morality issues. He signed on to do this. He was a professional hired to do what he's doing. So I don't know. I'm a little surprised that he's all of a sudden now has this moral conflict. Like he didn't expect it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is earlier on. They didn't send cyborgs and synths up there to have ulterior motives. I don't know, but it's just something to think about. And then he ends up uploading all the data that's in his head into a machine, I imagine, so that it gets sent to Waylon. But I thought he already sent info earlier to Waylon. I can't remember whether he downloaded all this info or not. But in this case, also, I'm wondering, now that he's uploaded all this info into the computer, he says that he deleted it. So he's deleting that data from his mind. At first, I thought he is deleting all memory of what has happened so that what's left over is orders, programming or something. Like he's going to go back to the way he was before he started having moral issues because he would have forgotten that stuff. But I'm thinking maybe not. Maybe all he did was erase the data that he was holding as if he had a backup drive that had that data and literally just passes over. But his human brain and his cyborg part are still intact as is. I'm not sure which way it is because I just didn't know. I wasn't sure. And then the part of the cyborg and those two kids, at first I was thinking, wait, how does he not know? Or rather, how does he know that those kids are synths? Why doesn't he just assume that they're cyborgs like him? To answer his own riddle, when is a machine not a machine? Or if you're thinking like, how could synthetics have parents? Well, if they were actually cyborg, because then they'd be human and have synthetic parts and have parents. However, then I realized, oh, he deducted that they were synths because in talking to them, he sensed, yes, human or like a human side, except it was of a child, but they were in more adult bodies. So therefore, it could be a synth with child programming. So that's why he probably thought, oh, they're synths with child programming. Now it makes sense to me. But in any case, they imply that they're not synths. They really were not prepared. Did they not get a briefing on how to behave or what? They sent one guy to escort 7 kids. Out of control. What'd you expect? Of course they're going to leak this stuff out. They don't know what they're doing. And so they imply that, but they were still good enough to not talk about it, but they were not smart enough to really get away with not saying anything. Kind of thought it was funny, the part where Kirsch walks up and then Morrow asks, is that your parent? And Kirsch was not really caring what he's saying. What are you talking about? And the 2 kids just run up behind him. And it was really funny because obviously they think of him as some kind of authority, almost like an adult who is their parent because they ran up behind him to hide behind. And I thought that was really funny. And also it's interesting that back at Prodigy, the people who developed them and worked with them directly seemed to care about these kids. One, the humanity part of them, the female, and then the other guy, the technician guy, seemed to worry about them on a product or technological level. He might care about their human side too, but he cares about them. Whereas the genius guy, the kid, I can't remember his name, he seems to not care. He cares about other things. And then later on, we get to see one of the eggs that has the face huggers in them. And it's just out in the open in the lab. I know Kirsch had gotten a lot of information on what happened on that ship. So he knows what that egg is and what's in it and what could potentially happen. Because he knows that there was something that was put into people's bodies and then they burst out from the inside. And this is an egg. Something is in there that probably caused those things to happen. They don't seem to mention it or even care so much, especially the Prodigy guy who just walks in there and wants to look into it as it opens. Where your head of science and security and all that stuff, who should know you should maybe wear some biosuit or something. This is alien stuff. There could be alien viruses or germs or whatever. And you're just like, whatever. You're just walking up in there with your whole face. It makes no sense, I think. You have professional scientists there who are going to be doing your R&D, with these specimens. Where are they? Where are these scientists? They should know better, right? And so it's just out in the open. Crazy. And then it's also revealed that some other guy who seems to be like a head of security of Prodigy or something goes to interview the two kids who had that interaction with Morrow, the cyborg, and he's asking them more about the cyborg. And I guess he's trying to determine whether or not important information was given to the cyborg. And it seems like because he figured out that they weren't regular synths and that they could actually see footage from inside their eyes and they record it. And the kids were not aware of that. And one of them did not like it. And then there's all these questions about ethics of if they're not human, but aren't they human? And do they have rights of privacy anymore? Or are they literally just property, even though they have a child's actual mind? There's no laws for that yet. It's just so many questions, so many interesting things, right? So anyways, he didn't hear that last question that the cyborg said to him, which was, when is a machine not a machine? And I think that's when he deducted, oh, that guy knows. And so they have to find him somehow. And then we see the cyborg, Morrow, he's contacting home base, Weyland Yutani, and it turns out that his boss is now the daughter of the boss that he's talking to, and it has been 55 years. At first I was like, how's that possible? He's not even 55 years old, so how could 55 years have passed? So I realized, oh, it's because of space travel. So in 1 year's time, when you're in space, is multiple years on Earth, I guess. That's the only possible explanation, right? For years to have passed by. Otherwise, your crew would have to be in an embryo to be able to be sent out and still return to be able to fly the ship and not be dead. Well, they would be older. You know what I mean? 55 years, they could still be obviously alive. But anyways, they would have to been really young. But we saw the crew and they were not in their 80s. So anyways, figured that out, I think. And then at the end of the day, Morrow's like, he wants to retrieve the specimens because that's literally his whole life, apparently. That's his life's work. And then we have one of the kids, I don't know her name, but she has darker hair and she seems the least affected and least childish. I'm not even going to say childlike, but the least childish and more level-headed, most okay with what's happened to us person. She goes up to the kid, Prodigy dude, and asks why Wendy is his favorite. And you were wondering, like, is she jealous? Do they have jealousy? Maybe, maybe not. But there's sense of competition here because she thinks that she's the best because she doesn't have no hang-ups of needing to find the brother. And she thinks that she could surpass him one day. That's interesting. She's like, I have my own ideas about the world and making it better. And so the genius kid, he's kind of creepy and he's like, oh, okay. Well, I'm going to give you some books to read and you should read them and come back and we can play. You know, and I think, well, this is what you had wanted originally, right? Somebody who can challenge you, right? And you thought that was going to be Wendy, but maybe it's her. And so now he's like, well, you're a runner-up for favorite now. Because she was not playing when he was like, what do you mean? I don't have favorites. She said she didn't think that geniuses would ask dumb questions. I thought that was funny. And so he was like, fine, yes, I have a favorite. But I thought maybe he might have been threatened. I don't know. She was a little scary to me. Even though she said she had ideas for a better world, she seemed, I don't know, like, oh, she's going to cause some problems in the future. And I also was thinking about what he said when he asked her what a prodigy was, and she said, child genius. And he's like, oh, one thing that people don't understand is that a prodigy is a child, or it has to be a child. And the reason for that is because they have infinite imagination. And I was wondering if he was referring that as to himself or referring that as to her, because I felt like maybe he was feeling threatened. And honestly, he's getting older. He will no longer be a prodigy when he's no longer a kid. And then here's this hybrid who mentioned in your face that they're never gonna die and I think I can surpass you. So I feel like he feels threatened, right? Because he will not live forever as a child. He will grow older and no longer be the prodigy, but she could be a prodigy forever because she will not die. But that's the thing though, if she's a child now, but even though her body doesn't grow, her mind will grow beyond being a child, and she no longer has a child body. So she really isn't going to be a child forever, really, technically. It's just that she will live forever and become smarter, but not a prodigy forever. If she had a child body, maybe I could see that, but also it would have to mean that she also has a child mind. And I think the child mind is only there now. I think it evolves, right? And she'll start to grow and become more adult in her mind. So maybe he's not threatening because they won't be able to both be prodigies for long when they get older in their heads and in physical form. I don't know. But I thought at the time he was threatened. I just thought this is odd that they were really not prepared for sending these kids out there, obviously, but they really should have had a debrief, you know what I mean, had some psychological testing. They should have had other testing done, especially because Wendy got really injured. They should have checked them all to make sure they were okay. And they might have just set that in the background really quick in passing, and I might have missed it. But I just thought this would have been an interesting and good time for them to study these creations they have and how they've interacted with the real world. Because if they did, they would notice that Nibs is having issues, right? Since she has the psychology of a child. This is what I talked about before, but again, that. She's having this trauma of, is she still her kind of thing almost. Like, is she still her even though she doesn't look like her? She's like, I'm not the same person. Am I that same person or am I not? She's poking at her fake body and poking at her eyeball. She's like, is this really me? Am I real? So they have issues. And it looks like they're doing some operation, surgery on Joe. And I thought, how is he not dead? Okay, fine. He's not dead. He got a puncture wound or something. And so they take out his lung and maybe they're replacing it with like a cybernetic lung. Maybe he'll become a cyborg now. But I was surprised he was still alive. But it looks like they took his lung out. And then you see that they're doing a biopsy on one of the eggs, I guess. Is that what it's called? I don't know. So they're like cutting it open. The smart girl who thinks she's the best, she's videotaping it. And I'm thinking, isn't this in the future? Don't they have really good technology where they could have a drone filming it? Or even better yet, filming through the eyes of the synth? You don't need a camera if it's recording from your eyeball. And the camcorder, really, that's your futuristic technology? We're using phones. Why are you using this big chunky recorder? We're using phones now, and not only that, but you can record from your eyeballs. And you got 3 of them in there. You got 6 cameras. Why do you need this other camera? That makes no sense. That's so funny. And also then, Wendy/Marcy, she wakes up. And when she first approached the ship, she could hear them somehow. And so she can still hear them because they're here now. Those aliens are now here, but she can still hear them. Why does only she hear them? Is there something special about her that we don't know about that was a part of her when she was a human? Because they said that she was special. Did she have some kind of psychic link? But would she still have that psychic link if all that was transferred was her mind? Maybe. But then why would she have that kind of psychic link? Was there a previous research vessel and was she created in a test tube, but as a human with alien DNA? Or maybe that's why she's special? I don't know. Very interesting. So the thing is, I'm also asking, is she just hearing them? And is she just feeling their pain? Or does hearing them hurt her head? Because she seems to be experiencing pain when she listens to them. And I can't tell if it's their pain that she's experiencing or her own pain from being able to hear them. I think it's their pain, maybe. Because I don't think she was in pain when she was on the ship from hearing them. But again, what an odd connection, right? So she is special. And again, they're doing this biopsy with no protection at all. They find their synths, but maybe when they walk through, they get sprayed out and they get disinfected. Maybe because they're synths. All right, okay. I might be able to let that pass. Interesting. The project kid left Kirsch in charge of the lab. Where are your scientists? I guess you really are not prepared. You really don't have the facility that could contain them all. Yes, you have a lab, but you're dumb to think that it could contain them probably. And you don't really have the research staff to actually do this. All you have is Kirsch. This genius is kind of dumb. He is not prepared. And then so Kirsch, he gets the face hugger out and he dissects it and pulls out the little embryo that gets put into different life forms' body. And I guess they assumed or realized or figured it out through the corpses and other data that Kirsch collected that it was the lung in which that embryo went to, because we all of a sudden see what looks like a lung in some tube and they put the embryo in it and it goes right into this lung. They are not prepared for what's going to happen. What are they doing? They're so crazy. And so they're going to create a xenomorph, I guess. And we'll see what it looks like, because is it going to be like those regular xenomorphs that look like that because of humans? It should, because we're thinking Joe's lung. So will it have Joe's DNA? Do any of the xenomorphs have... Well, the xenomorphs end up looking the way they do because of human DNA, I guess. So they'll have human DNA that make them look the way they traditionally look, but nothing else from their host, right? So it wouldn't matter that it was Joe's lung, or does it? So that's all my thoughts for this episode. However, after the episode, I also then asked the same question as previous ones, the question of the eggs. So when they went to this distant moon and picked up some of these life forms, did they pick up these eggs and bring them in, and they were just all dormant because they stay dormant until they sense a life form and then they open up? But wouldn't they have opened up because there were other life forms, or these are other ones that didn't open up yet because there were enough that did open up that destroyed the ship? Or did new eggs appear, which then would mean that there was a queen? So is there a queen, or is there not a queen? And are these just the eggs that they picked up and those were just dormant ones that didn't open? I think that's probably what happened, that they're just more eggs that didn't open yet and that they only picked up eggs. Therefore, no queen. That's it. Oh, and what do you guys think?